Here we are down in Beaver Hole. Not really sure there's anybody living in here. There, look at all that. I actually have a smile on my face, feeling like I did something for the day. I know it sounds silly and futile. Exercises in futility, maybe. This guy is a beast. This might even be one of those where I need chains and come-alongs and all kinds of other stuff to get it out. You guys are probably saying, don't hurt your back, Mark. Still got to go to your other job. It ain't worth it. Yeah, I know. It's part of life, though, you know. Shop's a complete mess. Just had to do a little bit of wrench and vice grip work here to get this out. Why? Because of all of this gook that gets caught, builds up. All this gook builds up on the inside of the clutch drum. Makes it darn near impossible to get the clutch drum off. One trick that I taught myself is, see how this doesn't fall through? I pick a wrench that won't fall through the vice grips. I very gently grab onto the spline of the hub with the vice grips while it's on the saw, while it's here, and I take the wrench and I pry up here. I hold the wrench here and tap there, and the vice grips are going to fall off the hub a couple of times. That's how stuck in there that hub is. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting that hub to get it out constantly. You're going to have such an arm wrestling match to get it out. I just wanted to pull this off to make sure that I'm getting lube in here into the bearings after using the saw for cutting ice and having all the water get in there and wash the bearings out. Looking for a hacksaw blade, but I can't find one, and all my saw stuff is on the lid of the toolbox. These lights are awesome. Bendy lights. Harbor Freight, 35 bucks. One of the best things I've ever bought for my shop. You can stick it onto anything that's metal and it'll stay there. It'll sit right there and behave. I love those magnet lights. They're great when you got to get around and fish around and you need something to grab. You always know where that is. It's always stuck to a piece of metal. So let me just show you here with the hub. The old greasy saw hubs, they get pretty yucked up. And all of this junk in there, it's going to keep the hub completely frozen to the saw. That's why I put the vice grips on there and do that little trick with banging it out. If you don't pull your hubs off regularly, this is what'll happen. Now, the problem with canola oil especially when it mixes with sawdust and does this, all of this stuff that's in there is gonna turn rock hard. And it's all it is just fine sawdust and hardened up to oil. I'm gonna be pulling this hub off more often. So hopefully this won't happen again, but if it does, I got the remedy of when it's stuck on there. I want to find the nubber. Actually, it's so gummed up in there, I actually need the compressor. So this saw is actually in pretty dire need of a major cleaning. That much gum on the drum. Because I bought this saw used off a guy, he took really good care of it, but those are things that a lot of people don't do as a regular maintenance thing because they don't deal with it that much as a maintenance issue. If you don't have to remove the drum often, you don't ever think to clean it out, to pull it and clean it out. We will just put this back in. It'll go back in now just fine. Alright, so say this is a stuck clutch drum. Say it won't come out this way, right? No matter how hard I pull on it this way, it won't come out. So this is the trick. Put the wrench in there. Right, just get your vice grips set up so you're on 1 and 2. Right, you don't, I mean, it's kind of hard. You don't want to be crooked, you want to be straight. So it's going to be 1 ridge and 2 ridges, right? Or 2 ridges and 1 ridge. You want to keep it square. So I go all the way down with the vice grips and I adjust the vice grips so that it's kind of hard to squeeze them, but not hard enough that it's going to damage anything. And that's why I get a bigger wrench. And I just keep adjusting. Right now I have it on kind of light because I don't need it, but just this leverage in itself, right? I'm just showing you guys for example. Say this is really stuck on there, but it's not anymore. And anything that's really stuck, if you just sit and tap it a little bit, you don't have to wail on it. If you have to wail on it, there's a problem. There's more of a problem there than you really want to be dealing with, and then you know that you're going to have broken parts. Most likely, if it's that stuck in there, your bearing case, your carrier for your bearing is melted in there, and that's holding everything frozen in there solid. So that's another, that's why I lube the bearings up. The bearings only work when the saw is at idle, when the clutch is spinning but the drum is not. Does that make sense? So if this is all spinning and this is not, that's where the bearing comes into play. That's all that bearing's for. That's why when you engage the brake of the saw, you don't want to sit there and lay on the throttle, because then you're going to heat the bearing up. So I just wanted to get that ridge in there. I just wanted to show you that little example of what I come across all the time when I'm maintaining my saws and changing sprockets and changing drums. Every time I change a sprocket, I check the drum to see if the drum is stuck on there. These aren't the best tool for this, but they might work. Yeah, they'll work. I always use pliers or something to push that snap ring back on. they just go on that much easier when you, instead of trying to hammer on it or push on it, you can push on it with the end of your scrunch or tap it in with it, but then it's likely to shoot off that way and take off on you. Spraying WD on the chain, I only do that because WD-40 removes water, and it'll keep a chain from seizing up. It will sit on a chain that's not being used for a very long time. If you're going to hang that chain up, it's good to spray them off before you hang them up. I've got a lot of chains around here that I didn't spray off before I hung them up, and they basically turned to stone. They turned stiff as a board, right? That's what happens with canola oil or a lot of bar and chain oils, but see how that's seized in there now? That'll be fine, because that bar I use just for a lot of ice work and other crappy work where I don't really care about the bar or the chain too much. But that's what happens to them if you don't spray them down. Now, if I take and spray this down with WD, it's going to loosen it right up. And this is just your cheap way of keeping your chains from seizing up on you like this. WD is not really a lubricant as much as it's a water repellent. It removes water from things. But it does help loosen things. It doesn't work as a lubricant for moving parts for very long. But it's like they say, you know, something's better than nothing. You know, it's better than spitting in a bearing to get the bearing. You know, you can always pour gasoline. You can always spray gasoline on your chains to keep them from seizing up. But then that can be a very stinky, messy process. Nobody wants to have gasoline all over. But yeah, that's just one thing. Cutting on the ice. Those are two things that you're going to want to do. The other thing when you cut ice, a lot of ice, is you might be getting water in here. You might want to pull this off. Just spray a little bit of lube in there. As far as the rest of the internals of the saw, you know, you can pull the air cleaner every time after you cut ice and blow things out. Hope that your air cleaner dries out if it got any water. But usually if your air cleaner gets water, the number one thing it's going to happen, your saw is going to stop running. Because water, in a saw motor, water does not, it doesn't combust. It doesn't vaporize. It doesn't just disappear. It could cause damage, or it could just kill the motor for that time being. You might have to pull the plug and blow the water out. You don't want to keep trying to run the water, because then you're going to have vapor lock issues. You're going to create unnecessary pressure in there. You could cause pitting. You could cause, if the wrist pin gets washed out, or the wrist pin bearing gets washed out, or the crank bearing gets washed out, then you could really have trouble. You don't want the water to mix with the fuel add mixture within the crankcase where it's scavenge cycle. Soon as I get a saw wet, I turn it off, and then later I'll pull it apart. I'll pull the plug out, pull it over a few times, try to blow that water out, leave it open, maybe take the muffler off, let it air out. Usually water in a saw, it'll stall right away, and you don't want to keep, if you keep trying to run it, keep trying to pull it over, you're just pulling that water down in to the crankcase through the carburetor. If you get water in here, then you just want to stop. You don't want to keep trying to pull it through. Go leave it dry. Maybe pour some gas down in there, let it set overnight. But, yep. Just got to be aware of these things. Water is not good for saws, but it doesn't kill them right away. You can stop it.